If I were to ask you whether World War III could be nuclear, you would doubt it, but eventually you would say no. After all, there can be no winners. Nobody would benefit from it. Indeed, you would be right. And if I were to ask you whether it could start by accident, for example, right now, you'd be sure that it's impossible. What if I told you that the world has been on the verge of collapse at least 18 times? In 1983, an alarm sounded in a secret bunker by Moscow. A brand new satellite called I detected 5 missiles blazing from US territory. The officer on duty, Stanislav Petrov, was obliged to report it to the command so that the Soviets could prepare a retaliatory strike. Still, he found it strange that the Americans had sent only 5 missiles, not hundreds. What are we going to do? Nothing. Petrov violated all regulations and considered the signal to be false. 3, 2, 1. Radars did not confirm the missile launch. Later, it was figured out that the satellite's lenses had been hit by sunlight, reflected off the clouds, and the satellite had confused it with rocket launches. The solar flares almost made the two countries burn each other. Meanwhile, your grannies, parents, and grandpas were drinking tea in front of the TV and had no idea that the world had miraculously escaped the apocalypse. This man literally saved the whole world. We took all of this footage from a movie about his life. This is what he actually looked like.
I was just at the right place at the right time.
Yet, what if such a false alarm was repeated today? What if it were believed? You sitting in front of your screen might not be afraid of nuclear war, saying, "No, that can't happen in our modern times." Or to be afraid. Doesn't matter. Right now, 24/7, thousands of people on both sides of the ocean are watching each other, ready to launch a missile within minutes after the order. But that's not surprising either, is it? Right. We're interested in the rules and regulations of nuclear warfare. Yeah, it seems that 2022 wasn't dire enough. So we decided to start 2023 with a nuclear war. Now you'll find out what nuclear war is like and what is hidden in the nuclear briefcase. How many atomic bombs have been lost and then found? Is it really possible to survive in the subway? Who will continue the war if the entire government dies? How far away is a nuclear missile from you? And who has a ticket to the doomsday plane? The Stanislav Petrov case took place in a similar place. It was not the only case when people almost unleashed nuclear war. This is not a scenery. I am in a real bunker that was built in the 50s. During the Cuban Missile Crisis, the power elite had been staying in this particular bunker for 10 days waiting for the result of the negotiations between Khrushchev and Kennedy. Their talk was to decide whether the Soviets would launch hundreds of nuclear bombs at America or not. On the surface, people had no idea that nuclear war was about to break out. Adults were watching TV, children were playing football, while the marshals were sitting right here holding their hands on the red button. Cuba, 1962. The Americans used conventional bombs not far from the shore to drive a Soviet submarine out of the water. And its commander, having no contact with Moscow, decided that a nuclear war had broken out and nearly attacked the Americans with nuclear torpedoes, such as this one. And that's how they would have blasted off. Fortunately, there was an officer, Vasily Arkhipov, on board who straightened out the commander. There were more than a dozen similar cases where we were on the verge of collapse. Life is terrifying. In fact, the places like this one seem to be quite safe. It's 215 feet deep, as if the 22-story building was turned upside down and buried underground. So here I am, sitting in a penthouse underground that can withstand any impact. Unless a thermonuclear charge explodes at ground level right above me. Yup, Eon. Nuclear bombs are like the Fast and Furious sequels. There are lots of them. we certainly don't need more. And the laws of physics are terrifying in both of them. It would take about 15,000 tons of conventional explosives to demolish a small city, a huge amount of TNT. On the other hand, the same explosive power can be provided by a single nuclear bomb just 5 or 10 feet long. Inside it, if we shoot a piece of uranium into another piece of uranium, the more advanced version is to pressurize uranium and plutonium from all sides with a chemical explosion. What for? This way, we start the chain reaction of breaking the radioactive nuclei apart. The released energy turns all matter around into a superheated plasma, and the surrounding air is compressed into a dense wall that demolishes everything in its path like a jet bulldozer. The information above is about the nuclear bomb that was dropped on Japan. As we know, technologies always progress, and something that used to be considered the best, the pinnacle of weapons evolution, is now just used as a match to ignite a more powerful bomb. If you put heavy hydrogen in a container and detonate a nuclear charge inside it, then the hydrogen won't burn up. Nope. Because of the infernal heat, its atoms would fuse with each other. For a fraction of a second, a mini-sun will give the energy of 1,000,000 tons of TNT. That's a new level of power. Thermonuclear weapon. This is how modern warheads work, though they're habitually called just nuclear. It is a true masterpiece of death which has changed the strategy of war forever. But we use it not to make war. Fear of such weapons keeps the fragile peace in the world. It is called nuclear deterrence. It's like a Mexican standoff in which everyone aims warheads at the opponents, but no one strikes first, knowing that he would also be destroyed in return. So how many bombs do we need for the duel? Only 9 countries possess nuclear weapons, and each of them could have only 100 nuclear bombs to blow up the enemies. 100 nuclear bombs. 100 nuclear explosions would be enough to send any enemy, even a superpower, back to the Stone Age. 9 multiplied by 100. We get 900 nuclear bombs for deterrence, in theory. But what is the real amount? 14,000. 14,000 nuclear warheads to blow the shit out of this planet. And that's just a paltry remnant of what we had during the Cold War. Look, the USSR used to have a stockpile of about 40,000 nukes. Now, both the US and Russia have 6,000 warheads each. The numbers are still insane, but not all of them can be used at the snap of a finger. Some are waiting to be scrapped, some are held in reserve, and only 3,000 in total are deployed, that is, ready to be launched. But if you think that the countries compete only in terms of the quantity of bombs, then you're wrong. Another matter is their delivery. It's even more important. Like in sex. It's not just the size of your potential that matters, but also the way you move it. During World War II, atomic bombs were moved by planes. The nukes were released above the surface, and gravity did the rest. The scheme is pretty simple, but sometimes it failed. The Americans dropped nuclear bombs 32 times in the wrong places. They burned with the planes, sank into the sea, landed on residential areas, and contaminated Greenland with radiation, and 6 bombs were never found. But the main disadvantage of the bombers was the fact that they took a very long time to reach the enemy. They were shot down. And hence the question, how to make sure that all your weapons would reach the enemy. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. That is, don't carry all the weapons in one type of transport. That's how the nuclear triad was invented, which means attacking the enemy from 3 areas. The first area is the land. Here, intercontinental ballistic missiles with warheads take off from silos or mobile ground complexes. They're super fast, capable of circling half the planet in half an hour. Therefore, they're the first to be used. Their targets are storage sites of the same missiles on enemy territory. Thus, there will be a chance to destroy them before they're launched, while they peacefully rest in their silos. Now let's look under the water. This is where similar missiles are launched by submarines. At depth, they're invisible to the whole world and can move straight to the enemy's shore or surface from under the ice of the Arctic and strike from there. This is a trump card in case both sides run out of military facilities and start bombing civilian cities. Here come the classics, the air. Planes carry nuclear bombs and cruise missiles. Bombers are easy to divert or return to base if the alarm is false. Ballistic missiles can't do that. This isn't a movie. There's no abort or self-destruct buttons for real, non-training missiles. Once they're launched, that's it. They won't stop. it's a one-way ticket. Even if the military or president realize that they've made a mistake, they won't be able to deactivate their own missile. It's a one-way trip. It's designed so that any enemy agent couldn't sabotage an attack from the command center or hack into a missile from elsewhere. The location of the nuclear missiles is kept top secret. That's what I used to think. And that's what my teacher used to say. In fact, the locations of the American nuclear weapons are well known. Here is a map of the exact location of the bases with the type and the number of warheads. These facilities were declassified by the states themselves when they signed the Non-Proliferation Treaty. And here are the roads where the bombs are transported under escort in super protected trucks. There's also a lot of information about Russian facilities from international observers. I swear, Mr. Agent, all this information was just Googled. Nobody, absolutely nobody, leaked any state secrets to me. You can check it. If you live in one of these areas, you should know that there are 300 ballistic missiles. In case of trouble, they will be the first targets. It's called a counterforce strategy. Are they really just standing there waiting to be hit in the event of war? Without any trickery? There's one. Russia has an ace up its sleeve. About half of these 300 missiles are on top of the Topol-M RS-24 Yars mobile systems. If something happens, they sneak off to a neighboring region and launch the missiles from some forest meadow among the mushrooms. What for? To make bigger mushrooms. You know what? There are a lot of missiles in silos. And if you live close by, you seem to have the most powerful weapon at your side. And it kind of protects you, and on the other hand, no, it threatens you. But if both countries know everything about each other, what weapons are hidden under their mattresses? Can we intercept at least some of them? You've probably heard of missile defense, or BMD for short. How does it actually work? Basically, it doesn't. The problem is that we've created too many advanced ballistic missiles to be able to shoot them down. Those are incredibly sophisticated gadgets, just like the space rockets used by astronauts. They even adjust their course according to constellations when they go into space. Its flight is divided into 3 phases: ascent, space phase, and descent of the warhead into the atmosphere. In order to destroy it on the ascent, your anti-missiles must stay in enemy territory. That's impossible. Shooting it down is a difficult task. It's like hitting a bullet with the same bullet when it flies at a speed of 12 to 18,000 miles per hour over 5 miles per second. Therefore, the best time for interception is at the second stage in space. On that occasion, the warhead has a trick. It ejects several more warheads at once, which fly to different targets. It looks like a revolver. That deserves a like. Along with the warheads, the rocket releases a cloud of distracting objects, just like a magician's hat. Metal debris, inflatable orbs, all this stuff confuses the radar, making it see a cloudy spot. There are even exact replicas of warheads, though empty inside. The interceptor missile can't see the difference and might attack the empty one, or at best, destroy just one nuke out of the pack. Yet these are not all protective measures. The warheads are covered with thermal camouflage, which masks them from anti-missiles. In other words, people have created something that can't even be destroyed. Are we so damn smart? Or so hell stupid? But this is not all bad news. Russia and the US have very few weapons capable of shooting down intercontinental missiles. That's kind of the agreement, so that nobody relies too much on missile defense. And people were still afraid to start World War III. Why? Otherwise, if we build stronger and bigger anti-missiles, then the enemy will also build stronger and bigger missiles. Consequently, we'll do the same, and so it goes on forever. In Alaska and in California, right here and here, the US has stashed 44 of these beauties, anti-missiles that are supposed to shoot down an enemy missile in space with just an empty shell with an engine. What is an empty shell in space, That's a good question. It's better to see it once. Rocket drops the fairing so as to not obstruct the straight flight, turns back, and aims. Here comes the shell. There's no explosive inside. It's just a piece of metal with expensive sensors and thrusters, and bang, target hit. That is American. What about Russia? Moscow is surrounded by a ring of 68 nuclear anti-missiles. They're fast, leaving the pen like bulls, and have a mini nuclear charge to detonate near the enemy warhead when it's already descending in the atmosphere, which is different from the American approach. Shell in space, or nuclear, intercept in the atmosphere. Which is the better system? We'll see. For now, let's have a closer look. Here's Leroy Merlin in the Solntsevo district. Here you can find beautiful wallpaper, choose a tile or chandelier, and here across the street you can find 12 missile launchers. Here are 16 more anti-missile launchers near the Vegas shopping center, 12 near Korolyov City where the moose are walking, 16 in Skodnia, 12 in Sofrino near the giant pyramid-shaped radar. All these objects can be seen on the map. They're not blurred and the coordinates are taken from public sources. Still, you'd better avoid hiking in these areas. Moreover, you shouldn't rely on a BMD system if you live outside this area. The Russian nuclear umbrella protects only it. By this point, you might have thought, Jan, why are you only talking about Russia and the US? Are we watching a political show? No, we're watching YouTube, so we need entertainment. Actually, guys, I don't have any aggression towards these countries. And I don't consider this scenario to be the only one that starts a nuclear war. I mean, the relationship between Russia and the United States. A nuclear war can start anywhere, not just between Russia and the United States. Like what? For example, India and Pakistan. They have long been fighting over the state of Kashmir. Both countries refuse to reveal how many nuclear weapons they have, but each is believed to possess 150 warheads. So, the next war might be nuclear. Another likely scenario is a dispute between North Korea and the Americans. Kim Jong-un has long been testing new missiles, and he already has one capable of dropping a warhead anywhere in the US. Someday, the Americans might assess the risks and throw 5 or 10 nukes at the Korean facilities in advance. That's what Trump tweeted years ago, saying his nuclear button is much bigger and more powerful than the Korean leaders. And unlike him, Trump's button actually works. Sounds cool. The boys have grown up but still compare their toys. My toy is better. No, my toy is better. The boys yell. Actually, Trump doesn't have one at all. I mean the button. The red button is just a symbol. The American leader instead has 2 keys to start a nuclear war. A suitcase and a black leather bag called football, derived from the attack plan codenamed Dropkick. And the second key is a card with the code called Biscuit since it crunches when opened. The suitcase, which is always carried after the president, contains something like a manual Nuclear War for Dummies. It's a list of possible targets, attack scenarios, and bunkers. According to the law, no one can prevent the president of the US from using nuclear weapons. He has the right to send 1 missile or even 1,001. At that time, Trump still had 3 weeks left in his role as president. Let's assume that he decided to go rogue. First of all, the Pentagon officer would tell him the code personally or via a secure channel. In response, Trump would read the code from the biscuit. Then the Pentagon is supposed to send the launch codes to the submarine crews and missile engineers. That would take up to 5 minutes. 5 minutes and the world goes back to the Stone Age. All my dreams of a successful YouTube channel and hundreds of videos I planned would go to hell. Actually, so does the whole world. What about Russia? What's in Russia, Jan? Russian, black. Suitcase contains the most important phone in the country. It's called the Shiget Subscriber Complex. You can't use it to order a pizza. Hello and hey, that makes no sense at all. You don't even need to talk. No one knows what's inside now, but it used to look like this, as easy as possible. All the activation codes are programmed into the memory. It used to have a red button for sure, even more than one. Just select the recommended plan, and that button would send the codes in the form of encrypted signals. Shiget differs from its American counterpart, as it activates only in response to a missile attack. The first strike isn't allowed. The president, the minister of defense, and the chief of general staff have such suitcases. The missiles will fly if a signal is received from at least 2 of them. But what if all the government was killed in the first hours of the war? Who will take revenge? That is an interesting question. To avenge the enemy, the system called Perimeter, nicknamed the Dead Hand, comes into play. It was created in the USSR, and so far there's no information that it's been disabled. There are many myths and legends about it, too many rumors, but we have some information from one of its creators. The system will launch a special missile with a radio transmitter instead of a warhead. And the missile will fly over the country, commanding the silos and submarines to launch all remaining weapons. This will happen if a network of sensors all over the country detects many radiation pockets and seismic tremors in the same places, and only if there's no contact with the general staff, the president, or the main control system. Then, the dead hand will realize that it's alone and take full control. Sounds creepy. The computer continues the war when there's no one else to fight. But it's unlikely to happen, because the top leaders of the state have plenty of places to hide and command from. And these are not just bunkers. The best way to survive a nuclear explosion is to be above it. For example, on a plane. But why? Because most warheads will explode at an altitude of about a mile, so that the shockwave doesn't lose power on the way to the ground. And at an altitude of 8 miles, the shockwave will hardly reach the airplane. The passengers will be shaken at most. That's why the presidents of Russia and the US have air posts. Airborne command posts, or doomsday planes. Yes, there are such things. You probably didn't know it, but the US president is always followed by a doomsday plane wherever he flies, just in case of a nuclear emergency. The American Boeing E-4 and Russian IL-80 are protected from any radiation of a nuclear blast and stuffed with tons of equipment to control the rest of the army from the air. There's even an antenna several miles long, which is unwound for communication with the submarines. Such a plane can fly for several days without landing if refueled in the air. Okay, presidents will burrow or fly away, but what should mere mortals do? How will we even know about the threat? Alas, we'll know about the attack just 10 or 15 minutes before the explosions. Yes, the time is limited. Why? Because the missiles fly for about 30 minutes, more or less. They have to be detected, and then track the route, and then give all the orders. It would take from 10 to 15 minutes for our military. After that, you'll hear the emergency alert signal or the civil defense siren from the street speakers, and even from traffic police cars like this. National TV channels, radio, and street screens will provide the exact instructions on what to do, but I can tell you even now, you have to look for an underground shelter without hesitation. A subway station deeper than 20 yards can sustain a wave and violent underground tremors from an air blast nuclear explosion. The station contains a forest of batteries for emergency power and filters for air since it'll be taken from the outside through a shaft. The other ways to the outside world will be blocked by the heavy hermetic door. What if there's no subway nearby? No worries, here's Plan B. Many civil defense shelters were built in the 20th century. Think Soviets. Though few people know their location. They're harder to find on maps than the nuclear silos. Besides, lots of shelters have been abandoned or turned into warehouses or parking lots. If there's no shelter nearby, it also may happen, that is, the shelter is far away, then don't waste your time. Get into the nearest basement or underground parking lot. See the numbers? The basements of multi-story buildings have larger numbers, which means better protection from radiation and shockwaves. Why is that? Because the more layers of concrete, the less dangerous gamma radiation they transmit. Basements are followed by rooms on the middle floors, away from windows. But all these shelters will be useless if the nuke explodes too close to you. Assume that the most common Minuteman missile warhead explodes in the sky right above the center of Moscow. The warhead has a yield of 350 kilotons, in other words, 350,000 tons of TNT. For comparison, this is 15,000 tons of TNT, which is 23 times less. Oh, and let me remind you, the warheads will explode at a height of several hundred yards so that the shockwave will reach the buildings and the people on the ground. First, a fireball up to a mile wide will burst into the air and cool from 100 million degrees to 6,000 degrees in 1 second, releasing energy with light, heat, and radiation. Right below it, everything that can ignite on the ground will burn instantly, and even at a distance of 5 miles, the light will leave deep burns on the skin. Following that, the shockwave will flatten all buildings and superficial shelters within a radius of about a mile, but the farther away from the center, the weaker it is. And people in this ring would have a great chance of surviving in basements and shelters. Here you can survive a shockwave even in your own bathroom. The buildings will resist, but the glass will fly like shrapnel from a grenade, and there will be a significant shuffling in the apartments. It would still end up with more than 500,000 dead and 1.5 million wounded. And that's just one warhead. A very difficult time awaits all those who survive and manage to leave the city. After all, war not only breaks civilizations, but also the climate. It seems that hundreds of warheads will heat up our planet. But in fact, the heat will last only as long as the cities and forests burn. And then, it'll get colder. In fact, millions of tons of soot and smoke will fill the air and block out the sun, thereby blocking out the heat. If the conflict is localized, for example, India and Pakistan detonate 50 bombs each with Hiroshima-like power, then only 5 to 6 million tons of black smoke would erupt. Such a scenario is called nuclear autumn. The temperature on the planet would drop by a few degrees, but that would be enough to starve 2 billion people due to severe crop failure. Shitty, but bearable. It'll be a total disaster if Russia confronts America. 150 million tons of smoke will go up, and noon will turn to dusk. The air will cool by 15 or 20 degrees. That's the theory. People would have to forget about bread and agriculture for a decade, because nothing grows in such conditions, not even at the equator. This scenario is called a nuclear winter. Everyone will suffer from it. Buddhists who don't tolerate violence, Papuans who have never even heard of nuclear weapons, socialists and capitalists, the rich and the poor, all share the same fate. Left without food and heat, humanity will never see the first spring sun. Countries can no longer abandon all nuclear weapons. We're hooked on this crap. Yeah, that's the paradox. Nuclear weapons terrify us, but they also bring us peace. Over 70 years after the creation of nuclear weapons, the number of deaths in wars has been reduced by 95%. That's decent. So, should we fear nuclear war? We are much better protected against false nuclear alarms than we were in 1983. The ground radars scan everything that appears in space within 4,000 miles, even if it's the size of a soccer ball. What about the satellites? They're new. Both Russians and Americans have smarter satellites. They can detect the target of an enemy missile. Also, they automatically exchange data with radars and will cancel the alert if they don't receive confirmation. One more reassurance to you. A nuclear war won't start all of a sudden. Before it, countries are likely to argue even worse than they did during the Cold War. And you'll find that out on the news. Who am I kidding? We'll find that out from memes, no doubt. Yeah, but I want to warn you. As soon as all the memes about it are no longer funny, it's time to buy canned goods and get out of the cities. Therefore, you can sleep soundly. As for politicians, our team has one thing to say: make love, not war. Twice a week is great. After all, threatening with warheads in every dispute is exactly the same as standing waist deep in gasoline and boasting about the matches you have.